Hello, lovely. Do you have anything to say? This one looks cool. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the session. The session for Sunday is preponed because I have some TA ship on Sunday that I have to do. So don't worry, this whole session is recorded. So if anyone who is not able to attend this session, so don't worry for that. This whole session is recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube for uh, you to watch at your time. Okay. Lovely Amu. So lovely Amu, do you have any question? Okay. Okay, so if you have any queries, you can always write it here in the chat box. That is quite okay for you to write it here. Otherwise, just post it to me. Okay. So as usual, let me share my slides first. Okay, so we are here. I hope my slides are visible to all, and if there is anyone who is not able to see, just inform me or write it here in the box. Okay, so that is quite okay. I'm not okay. Where's my video feed? There's some issue with my feed, I think. Okay, so don't worry if you have any queries. Please feel free to ask it here. This session has been preponed for today because I have some work on Sunday that I need to do. Okay, TA shift duty. I don't know why my feed is. Okay, no problem. Okay, so I hope my slides is visible and I am audible to you all. So if I am not audible or my slides are not visible, you can always write it here in the chat box. Okay. So let me start the session now. So welcome you all to the live session of NPTEL course Environmental Impact Assessment. This course is taught by Professor Harshit Susan Lakra. She is Assistant Professor in Department of Architecture and Planning, IIT Roorkee, and I am Rohit. I am a PMRF scholar at IIT Bombay. I'll be taking this live interaction session. So the teaching methodology will remain same. So we'll be meeting every Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. So I have some work related to some examination duty. So I won't be available on Sunday. So that's why the session has been preponed for today. You can always ask your questions as a discussion, or you can raise your doubts. And I always welcome interaction from the student. So if you have any queries or anything which you want to ask, just feel free to ask. Okay, don't hesitate in asking queries. So before we will move to the assignment question, let's have a short recap of the whatever was taught in the weekly slides. Okay. So basically, in this slide, which I could see, basically how the EIA process starts. So if you remember what was taught in the week one or week two, the EIA process start up with setting up a management process. Basically, it's the whole thing is uh, like kind of managed plan works according to the managed plan. So first thing is basically setting up a management process for the EIA activity, because basically the HR thing and all the personnel will be required. Second thing is screening of the project is done. Okay, so whether this project requires EIA or whether it is not requiring any EIA. Okay, so there is whole lot of notification in the Government of India directives, EIA notification 2006 also, and there is a draft notification 2020 also, which you can also visit. I think that's a quite good draft notification. There are several changes to the EIA thing. Okay, so that you can see once. Second thing is after screening, then you have decided like, yeah, this project will need an EIA. Then what you do? Then you go for scoping thing. Scoping basically decide kind of a system boundary for the thing. What is to be considered, what is not to be considered, whether this emission has to be considered, that emission has to be considered. That is a quite brain thinking process, brainstorming process. So a lot of things, a lot of experience goes into this. Then we conduct a baseline studies. Basically, baseline studies is kind of a normal situation, whether a kind of control study, like nothing has happened, project has not initiated, then what are the different parameter values, and then we do impact identification. What are the different impacts that it will have? Okay. Uh, Example of EIA team. So you can see various example. This is from the Federal Highway Administration. So US Department of Transportation. So this you can see a kind of the various person involved in this EIA project. So I won't go into details. Selection of team members is very important, because select an appropriate project team, deal with typical personal issues including staff turnover. So these are kind of HR thing, a lot of related to job description, job and okay. Basically, you need to get the people who know EIA better, kind of people who can actually apply the concepts that they have applied in some other experienced people, or maybe if they are newcomers, then they can also be included in this, because a lot of tasks required kind of understanding a kind of application concepts, a new thinking also. So that is quite okay. The style of the EIA process. So findings and data should be coordinated. Scientific technique, methods of these are different EIA process are there: democratic, collaborative, ethical, adaptive. So yeah, we'll go by one, and then we'll see what this EIA means. So rigorous, systematic, intensive EIA. So in the last week also we had different types of EIA and decision making. Okay, so this is something like that only. Okay, so systematic and intensive EIA process, basically that involves a kind of desirable where scientific analysis can support decision making. Okay, so a kind of example which I can give it to you guys, that let's say we have to we live in a Delhi, and you are a kind of a chief minister or lieutenant governor of Delhi. Now you need to take some decision regarding whether school has to be opened or not. So what you need some scientific evidence, whether PM particles have gone up, whether NOx, SOx, CO2 values how they are behaving in the change scenario. So based on that, you go for this decision making process. That is kind of a rigorous. So because that requires a lot of studies to be done on the field, and then data has to be compiled and then studied and analysis has to be done. Second is rational balanced approach. Okay, so that is process is adaptive and stakeholders can participate freely. Okay, basically then you are not going to put some what you say a kind of restrictions on the stakeholders. Now what, who are the stakeholders? The question remains the same. Stakeholders are someone who are getting affected by the projects or someone who has a kind of interest in those projects. Okay, so that's those can be called stakeholder, like people of the villages in which the industry is going to happen, so similar type kind of things. Streamlined or rapid EIA process. So basically, when there are resources are limited. So when I talk of resources, everything comes under this. Human resource also comes under the resource and data also. So what we do, there is whole streamlining of things are there. Then you kind of do a rapid EIA type of thing, like just you. Let me give you an example. Let's say city A has a kind of industry based on plastic, and city B is also nearby city, and they want to set up industry based on plastic. Okay, so basically from city A you had got a whole streamlined things like this will be the emission, this will be that, and everything, all those in it, so that you can just based on the parameters which are there in the city B, you can just get those values for city B also. So that is called rapid EIA. Democratic EIA basically works best when the proponents are willing to assign their decision making authority to the representatives who in turn have the time, energy, resources to participate in planning decision making process with other parties. So basically, instead of like if we see in India, India has a lot of population. So if we are going for a statewide or regional EIA in case of like take a state of India like Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has some population of 4 to 5 or 6, 7 crores, okay, something. So let's say you are doing going for EIA and then you cannot hear 6 to 7 crores. So what they do, they select the representatives like village heads, state head, district heads, and then you interact with them who basically have the time to basically go through the various planning and decision making process. Okay, collaborative EIA. It is like a democratic process, but with stakeholders being directly engaged in the process, having the resources to do so. So democratic is basically representative people are there, but in collaborative, all the people will be directly engaged. Ethical EIA is basically this is required when issues of fairness, equity, and justice kind of predominate. Okay, so basically ethics type of thing, like you are going to do a Bhopal gas tragedy that happened. So if isocyanide type of thing is there, and then that will require a ethical EIA. Okay, my stakeholders are willing to identify and reconcile their ethical conflicts. Adaptive EIA is basically this is appropriate for turbulent and basically kind of complex situation where risk, uncertainty, and health predominate. Okay, so these three parameters has to be taken into account. Where basically everything is related to human health only, na. Okay, so the risk, any type of risk, whether it is going through any soil or air, any disease borne, everything has to be taken into account. When the EIA needs to take into account the knowledge limits and uncertainty related outcomes. Okay, so all the definitions of EIA has to be taken into account when you are going for kind of streamlining these things. So EIA itself is kind of a very big study or a big. So there are various tools also available that goes into the identification of impacts. A kind of tool like LCA can help in identification of impacts, and then based on those impacts, stakeholders' decisions and decision makers can actually get involved, study those impacts, and then they can make a decision that will help them getting a good decision. Okay, so First thing is this. I think this was the project screening. This slide was there in the week one also, and there also I had explained it in much detail. So I will be kind of brief here. So project screening. So what we do in project screening phase, basically we look into that whether EIA is needed or not. That's okay. A category projects EIA needed. Sorry, A category B1, B2. A category EIA needed, B1 EIA needed, B2 EIA not needed. Okay. Scoping, which impacts and issues should be considered. There can be a lot of impacts based on the parameters or effluents that are coming out of. But do we have to consider each and every impact? And if we are going to consider each and every impact, then there will be a lot of resources that will go into, like we need to conduct scientific studies, and then we have to support our evidence decision making through those scientific studies. So in scoping, we basically identify the impacts which are more concerning to the human health, human risk, okay, uncertainty. Then we have description of the project, development, action, and alternatives. Description of the environmental baseline that I talked just 2 3 slides earlier. Identification of key impacts has to be done. Okay. Then we come to the second stage, prediction of impacts. Like if there is a, let's say if there is a pollution, air pollution, what kind of pollution is there? How much is the value of the pollution? Evaluation and assessment of the significance of the impact. Like if let's say there is 100 tons of CO2 going to the atmosphere, is it a significant amount, whether it is going to affect human health or not? Or not only human health, is it having any indirect impacts also? That also has, you have to see. Evaluation, basically identification of mitigation measures. Then, if there are any, then you look into the mitigation measures also. Like if there is carbon dioxide emitting into the atmosphere, so as a mitigation strategy, what you can do, you can deploy carbon capture units. Okay, carbon capture and utilization. So these things are there. Presentation of findings in the EIS, including a non-technical summaries. So, okay, review of the EIS decision making. So, I won't go into detail each of these points because these are very self-explanatory and these have been explained earlier also. Then post-decision monitoring, audit of the predictions and mitigation measures. Okay. So now if you are looking into screening, so let's say the first thing which you are going to do, so first thing which you will see, let's say I give you a project of 100 crore projects, let's say project A of 100 crores, setting up a iron ore factory of 10 million tons production per annum. Okay, so first thing which I will see whether it is exempt from EIA, matlab EIA is needed or not. So if okay, second is exempt from EIA, simplified EIA needed or full EIA needed. Okay, third is exempt from EIA or outline draft EIA is there. And if there is significant impacts are likely, then full EIA certainly will be needed. Okay, so and projects requiring EIA India. So this draft EIA notification 2006. Actually, I have this you can access it from here also. So category A projects, okay, will require EIA. Category B1 will require EIA. Basically, state government will be doing this. Then we have European Commission also. So they have also have guidelines. European Commission has a very detailed guidelines on this. Now, I think discussing this will take a lot of time. Advanced thresholds, advanced. This you can see it by yourself, and you can just ask any question. If there is any question, I will get into it because Professor herself has explained it quite beautifully, I think. Then scoping is there. Okay, so you basically define the different impacts and what kind of impacts you need to consider. Okay, and then Impact identification techniques. Okay, so first is environmental attributes that are particularly valued should be identified. So what are the different environmental attributes? Let me see if anyone of you have anything to say here. What are the different environmental attributes? Need to look into this. Oh, okay. So environmental attributes basically what are attributes? Attributes are basically characteristics. Okay. Impact considered to be a particular concern to the affected parties. Methodology that should be used to predict and evaluate different impacts. The scale at which those impacts should be considered. Broad alternative that might be considered. Outcomes should be identification of key issues, impacts, and alternatives. Scoping of opinion, socio-economic impact, archaeology, geology, hydrology, ecological impacts, biodiversity, cumulative impacts. So you can read all this. This is from Dartmoor National Park Authority. Okay. For India, if you are looking for any scoping guidelines, so basically terms of reference. If you are going to for EIA, so government issues a notification and it contains a terms of reference. So that basically consists of scoping here in India. Okay. So scoping basically refers to the process by which environmental advisory committee in the case of category A projects or activities and SEAC in case of SEAC basically state. In case of category B1 projects or activities including application for expansion and modernization, change in product mix of existing projects or activity determine detail. This you can read a lot of things later. Basically the terms of reference which the government gives is basically consist of the whole scoping process in the by the expert appraisal committee. Now there are different alternatives like the no action option, alternative location, alternative scales of project, process or equipment, site layouts, operating condition, ways dealing with environmental a lot of alternative that has to be considered. So please be mind of these things because this can be asked in the exam also. Lot of things overlay mass models. Okay, crucial project dimensions require purpose of the project life cycle, physical presence, process, policy context, associated policies, baseline both the present and likely no project future state of the environment, talking into changes resulting from natural events and from other human activities. The population of the species of fish in the lake may already be declining before introduction of industrial project on the lake shore. That is why EIA needed. So I will give you an example. So let's say there is a river and a lot of salmon fish is there in the river, but the due to some uh, like some chemical characteristic or anything, the population of salmon fish is already declining in the river, and then you are coming up with a project in the river. So basically you can't say them that they have actually polluted the river because the population of salmon fish were already declining even before the uh, this EI, this is there. Okay, this project is there. So basically, there are different categories. Impact identification, for impact identification, that is checklist, matrices, quantitative methods, networks, overlay maps. Okay. So we'll go by one for this method categories. Okay. The first is checklist. So checklist basically contains kind of questionnaire. Basically, you have to check. Okay. Uh, so there are different questions like from handling, storage, use of spillage, hazardous or toxic material. Okay. So this is what here. This looks like a simple matrix. Yeah. Okay. But there can be magnitude matrix also. Basically, a kind of level severity of the impacts. Okay. Then casual chain analysis for bus corridor movements. Okay, low floor buses. This you can see here. Now, what constitutes on overlay maps? Overlay maps are basically if there are any changes which are going to do in the scenario, then the map has to be laid down on a previous map, which basically shows the kind of change which has happened because of the project. Okay. So we'll read more about this overlay maps in the. I have shared a video, so let's play this video. Uh, Now we'll move to the assignment questions. So, because I think it's completed. Okay, this slide is completed. So, let's move to the assignment question. And if there are any queries, anything which you want to ask, please feel free to ask. Okay. So, basically, the first question is European EIA directives require EIS to include. Basically, that requires a description. Okay, description is very much important. The description of the physical characteristic of whole development, description of the main characteristic of the operation phase of the project, then estimation by type, quantity of expected residues and emissions. So all four options which are given here are actually correct in case of European EIA directive. Okay, so the correct answer here is answer D. Now we'll look more into the European EIA directive. So basically, this is kind of a first environmental impact assessment directive came into force in 1985. I thought, is there any questions or anyone want to ask any question? Yeah, Tarun, go on. Institutions. See, there is a draft EIA notification. I don't think EIA is applicable for educational institution until and unless these educational institutions are kind of located in uh, some eco-sensitive zone type of thing. Okay, so like if IIT Bombay is, let's say I am talking about my institute. So if you have to, this IIT Bombay was built much earlier before the AA came into force in 1964 or okay 1962. But in today's era, IIT Bombay is very adjacent to the national park. The whole Sanjay Gandhi National Park is outside the boundary of IIT Bombay. If you see the backside. So if IIT Bombay has to be situated made now, then EIA would have been required because this is kind of a eco-sensitive zone here. Okay, but there are different categories of project. The whole thing is that there are different notification is there which you can, I've given the link also in the slide, so you can click on that and see which kind of project, what are the capacity. Like not every power plants, not every dam require EIA. There is a whole lot of things which define, and EIA, if then who will do the EIA, whether it will be a central EAC like appraisal committee or state appraisal committee is there. Okay, so all these things you can look into. Okay, now I'll look into the European EIA directive. So it basically a kind of a first one of the type in first. So first EIA directives were basically from NEPA Act 1970 US. But European EIA directive also came into force in 1985, and they are basically a very comprehensive kind of directive. So this has been updated quite four times to bring in line with the EU international commitments. So basically, if you see the European countries, they are quite very serious about their environment, whatever environment or the surroundings which in which they live in. Even the country like Switzerland don't allow the polluting vehicles to enter their territories also. Okay, in 2011, directives 8533 CEC and its subsequent amendments was codified into a single new act. So basically, earlier it was a directive, but now they have been codified into act that is currently in the force. So basically, you can say, so you have to remember all those things. These can be asked in the exams also. What basically it constitutes? So reporting basically under the EI directive, EU member states. So what are EU member states? The basic various countries which are members of EU, like European Union, like 27 or 28 countries are there in the EU, like France, Belgium, Netherlands, New Zealand, not New Zealand, Switzerland, all those things. Okay, Germany. So EU member state basically provides statistics to the Commission, basically European Commission, on how the directive is implemented in their country every 6 years. So this is regular monitoring also. This includes the number of projects assessed under the two annexes of the directives, every length of the time of the EIA process takes, and the cost involved. Okay. The first reporting exercise is due in 2023. Okay. So there is a whole lot of things that goes into the European EIA directives, and these are kind of a very comprehensive directives when you look into these things. So when you open these directives, there is a kind of a commission proposed draft format also. They are kind of given to the member states for reporting. This is the European Environmental Impact Assessment. So, a report from the Commission of the Council, the European Parliament. Okay, so this you can go into and go and check into. Now, impact identification techniques we just read. Okay, so environmental impact that are particularly valued, correct. Impacts considered to be a particular concern to the affected parties, correct. Methodology should be used to predict and evaluate different impacts, correct. Scale at which those impacts to be considered, so that is also correct. So correct answer is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Answer D. Now impact identification technique, we just read it in the revision slides also, and this is kind of a EIA process you not look into. Okay, I was looking for something here. uh, Something was there. Huh, this was. So this is the link which you can go and see the directive. Okay, reporting all those things, guideline documents, publication, all those things are there for European Union. Environmental impact assessment by European Commission. Okay, these are environmental impact identification techniques. Now, I think this was there in the slide also, but to make it more understandable, I prepared some of my slides and I am sharing it with you so that you guys can have a good idea. Okay, checklist, matrices, networks, map overlay, ad hoc method, and then there are mathematical and computer based models also. One is deterministic model, that is gravity model, depend on the fixed relationship. So basically that means the whole product, the output is determined. You don't have any probability of occurrence. And then stochastic is basically there is a statistical probability that there will be a pollution, there will be this, and there will be that. So certain number of events will take place in a given area or time interval. Like I can say precipitation. Okay. So if there is impact on precipitation, so you cannot predict precipitation always. So there is a probability, stochastic type of models. Checklists are comprehensive lists for environmental effects and impact and indicators designed to stimulate the analyst to think broadly about the possible consequences of the contemplate. So, in the first class, I remember someone was asking how do we identify the impact. So, these are the techniques in which you identify. So, there are four type of checklists: simple, descriptive, questionnaire, threshold concern, scaling checklist. Simple is basically you can see this is kind of a simple cut no, a list of environmental parameters with no guidelines how they are to be measured and interpreted. Descriptive is basically when there is a data required, then there is a whole description, includes identification of the environmental parameters and guidelines on how to measure data on the particular parameters. Okay, so if there is water quality, then in water quality, what has to be measured? pH, EC, all those things. Okay, BOD, COD. Threshold checklist consists of a list of environmental components. For each component, a threshold at which those assessing a proposal should become concerned with an impact. The impact of alternative proposal can be seen by examining the number of times that an alternative exceeds the threshold of a concern. Okay, so basically you define a threshold, and the number of times that threshold is crossed is basically a kind of concern and then implication based on that. Metrics are two-dimensional tables which facilitate the identification of impacts arising from the interaction between project activity and specific environmental components. Okay, so they are basically first was simple checklist. So they are basically expansion of the checklist. Okay, fact that different components of development, construction, all these things. Okay, these entails in sales of the metric can either be qualitative or quantitative. So you saw that matrix table, and then first was color was varying. So that is basically qualitative, and then quantitative, the value has to be written. What are the values varying? Okay, network is an alternative for illustrating the secondary and subsequent effects of action on the environmental elements is to construct a network tracing. So there can be a lot of effects, and then that effect also has some effect, and that can also be affecting the whole project. Okay, The advantage of network approach is that it permits clear tracing of high order effects. Quite so. This is a kind of a best one of the best method of initial actions. Indeed, mitigation and control measure that can also be illustrated. One problem encountered in applying the network is that many higher order effects can be postulated that are actually unlikely to occur. So this is kind of a network like action, impact, and branches. Overlays are basically visual type of things. Okay, so there is a map, and if there are any changes, that has to be put on it as an overlay. So an effective visual aid used as a documentation of environmental condition existing before the project implementation may describe both biophysical and social aspect of the area under study. So this is a very important line. Okay, state true or false. In India, terms of reference is used for scoping problem. True, because we saw it in the slide. Terms of India, I think we talked about this. This you have to do. So match it. Okay. I think I have explained it a bit. So see if you are able to do it. Okay. Yes, Tarun. Option three. Yeah, correct. So basically, regress EIA is kind of systematic that we saw it here. Basically, a scientific analysis has to be done. Streamlined, rapid EIA. Okay. So this style is applied when resources are limited, data is less available. Ethical basically looks into the uh, ethical, like when fairness, equity, justice are important. And adaptive EIA style is adopted when turbulence and complex situation persist and there are risk, uncertainty, and health concern. This were discussed here also. I think was there in the slides. Match the following types of impact prediction with the examples given. So I think before that, let's move into the slides and let's see the some of the recap from the weekly lectures. So these are water quality standards. Now prediction identify direct and indirect impacts can be there. Geographical extent of impacts is important. The so impact doesn't mean that it will always have a negative effect. There can be positive effect also. So beneficial or adverse impacts, duration of impacts, prediction over the life of a project. So if these impacts have any effect on the life of the project, rate of change of impacts, irreversible, reversible, and cumulative impacts. So this is two images from Kisumu, Kenya, Accra, Ghana. So you can see here there are no houses or a kind of one permanent structure you can see here. But now after 10 years there are a lot of houses here, a lot of houses. So this is kind of you can say a kind of overlay also. Like on this graph, this whole houses are can be built, and then say that yeah, this is kind of a change in the environmental pattern. Receptor a kind of sense basically measures the sensitivity, okay, magnitude, probability, and then what are the sensitivity. Based on that, these impacts are actually identified whether it falls into high risk, nature, high receptor, high sensitivity, all those things. Okay, Quantitative, qualitative. Qualitative is basically kind of a visual impact. So, like you can see as in kind of colors, or you cannot quantify it. Quantitative, basically, you can measure it as a scientific data. Methods and models of prediction. So, this I explained earlier also. Dispersion model selection. So, there are different models for like air pollution, like EPA current preferred dispersion model. Aero mode version 191 was used for all the dispersion modeling scenarios, including its impact scenario. Prime building down was algorithm was not used for this analysis, since there were no roadway structures within the modeling domain that might cause significant downwards effect. So how? So average plume height was is calculated 1.7 into average fleet vehicle height. Okay, and then release height is basically 0.5 into average plume height, and then initial vertical dimension is plume height divided by 2.15. So that is basically vertical dimension up to which the emission will be there. Okay, types of impact prediction. So there can be hard model where mathematical simulation plays a central role. Okay, so like in air pollution Gaussian dispersion model. And the soft model where use of mathematical simulation model virtually non-existence. Okay, basically photo images are used, GIS is used. So these you can see here. A photo montage. A photo montage is a superimposition of an image onto a photograph in order to create a realistic representation of how the proposed structure will appear in the landscape. So let's say this is the landscape and you are going to build something. Let me zoom it. So this is kind of the project. So it is imposed on this photo to show that how it will look. So this is kind of photo montage. Then mixed model where simulation modeling is complemented by more technically lower level approach, like traffic impacts make considerable use of modeling, but often some sample survey input, like they do sampling, like how much vehicles are passing through this point, all those things. Output required for the impacts under consideration. So geographical area, different stages of assessment, what resources you have, criteria of replicability, consistency, and adaptability. So these are different. So you need to remember all these criteria, maybe asked in the exams. Okay. Sources, I won't go into much into detail. Causal networks are diagrams that demonstrate causal relationship between the elements and can be used to transparently demonstrate cause and effect. So basically, cause and effect relationship using the causal networks. This is kind of a causal networks. So basically, if this is a housing project, then depend on the population, available housing at the aesthetic area, noise, traffic, all those things. So this is kind of a causal representation. Cause effect flow diagram. This is kind of a cause effect flow diagram. Not much uncertainties. So there are a lot of uncertainties also because decision has to be taken, but there are possibilities because we are doing kind of survey type of things, analysis, forecasting, all those things are basically in. So these uncertainty are there in the decision making also. So this you can see it from here. Handling uncertainty, so structured involvement of stakeholders, agreeing on actions and options based on robustness. Okay, modeling interactions among the impacts, sensitivity analysis, comprehensive and sensitive monitoring, state the assumption and confidence range. So forecasting data source, these are various risk reports, some data source that you can use. UNEP, OECD, a lot of data is there in OECD, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, IPCC, European Environment Agency, Department for Food and Rural Areas, Department for Business, Industry and Industrial Strategies. A lot of data evaluating and assessing significance. So this is how the diagram which you saw here. So assessment framework for Hornsea to offshore wind farm. So for wind farm, sensitivity of receptor negligible. Okay, so receptor basically is not sensible, sensitive and doesn't have any sensitivity. Magnitude of impact. So this is how it is done. Okay, assessment framework for Hornsea to offshore wind farm, negligible significance, no effect. So they are basically, so if this is the chart, so this is how the basically the definition what considered negligible significance, minor significance, moderate significance. So all these things are there. Okay. Now let's move to the assignment questions. Match the March is written. Match the following types of impact predictions. So hard model, no software. Okay. So hard model is basically two air and noise impacts. Mixed models where simulation is come to okay. So this kind of I think perception no traffic impacts. Okay, because subsampling is also on soft model. Mathematical simulation virtually none perception studies. So this was choice of EIA method is based on following range of consideration. So I think it's all on these criteria of replicability. This you can see here from straight true or false the following diagram. So causal networks that demonstrate causal relationship between their element that can be used to identify what kind of impacts. So this is true causal networks which you have seen in the slides also. Okay, label the missing element in the decision tree for so decision tree basically cause effect relationship. Okay, so P is acceptable, Q manageable, R is unacceptable, S is abandoned in the whole part. So this you can get it from the slides also. This was there in the slides from taken from John Glasson and Ricky Therivel. Okay, then order the following cost benefit analysis. So applying sensitivity analysis. Okay, so first thing is basically you do is kind of identifying this kind of. So first is defining the project policy. Okay, then what you do? Not net value, not valuing impacts. Identify the physical impact. So 6 2, then valuing impact 3, 4 is discounting of cost and benefit flows. 5 is applying the net present value test, and 1 is applying sensitivity analysis. So this is cost benefit analysis, a systematic process of evaluating the desirability of the decision by weighing its potential cost and benefit. So if you are going to have a kind of project, so you need to look into whether it is kind of benefit or it is cost. So stage of CBA defining so this is from here only shadow pricing. So this is I think in the lecture 3. So basically if you before moving to lecture 3, I think let me find if something is there. So if there is any queries, if you have any queries, please ask. Otherwise, we can take a short break of 5 to 7 minutes. So so that you can go through the different slides and then ask your queries. Okay. Okay, so any questions from the no questions? Okay, then we'll move to the then slides. I've taken a video here. I think it is quite beneficial for you guys to see. So let me see if we find it any interesting thing here in this video. You are able to understand this cost benefit analysis, but many of our students may not be so much familiar with the cost benefit analysis. For that, I found a video, a kind of animation video that is explaining the cost benefit analysis. So let's see. I'm sure that you guys must have got a good sense of understanding about the cost benefit analysis and the different components which are involved in that. Okay, so let's move to the slides then. Basically, shadow pricing is kind of aggregation over goods comparing cost in one form and benefits in the other form. Like for an example, concrete used for the dam and the electricity produced from it. Okay, so basically comparing cost in one form and benefits in another form, not in the same form. That is, you do is shadow pricing. Discount pricing is aggregation over time comparing costs incurred from the benefit that expected in future. So basically, you have made a cost here in the first year itself, but benefits you are going to get in the future. Equity weights are basically aggregation over people comparing cost occurring to different people. That is, the correct answer is answer C. So shadow pricing, discount pricing, equity weights. Okay. Security weights you can say see here as an example. Cost of rupees 100 to a wealthy person, nothing. For poor person, okay, that may be a lot of 100. Shadow pricing is used to refer to either one of things. The actual work rate of market value of money market fund share is stated $1. And here they have given a good answer here. Okay, equity weights. This is how equity weights are actually calculated. Four levels of increasing public power and public participation methods. So information feedback methods. So before that, I think we need to look into the different things of the slides actually. What was So basically, we'll learn about impact identification. So decision tree for determining environmental acceptability. So impact basically, when you are going for impact, is it acceptable? Is it manageable or unacceptable? Then you take the various decision based on that. Acceptable, then there is no significant impact. Threshold is there, and then unacceptable, like there is a significant impact, and then zero impact, catastrophic impact. Right. So basically, in catastrophic impact, you try to move below the threshold. Okay. Framework for judging environmental acceptability like ecological, physical, and biological systems. So these are non-negotiable impacts are there. Negotiable impacts are also there. Humans, loss of human life. You cannot tolerate loss of human life. So that is non-negotiable impact. And then negotiable impact like community benefits, cost and where they are born, reasonable, all these things. Criteria standards for determining significant thresholds. So based on these criteria, the threshold are actually determined. Determination of environmental significance, the values, sensitivity, quality of the environment which is likely to be impacted, extent of the likely impact, the consequence of the likely impact, resilience of the environment to cope with the change, the cumulative impact with other projects, level of confidence of, so these are different determinants for the determining the environmental significance. Cost benefit analysis and monetary evaluation techniques. So cost benefit is basically a decision. So I think I should not go into detail because a lot of things were explained in the video itself. This is how the cost benefit analysis is actually calculated. So year wise, total benefit, total cost, net benefit. Okay. And then methods for evaluating non-market goods or intangible goods. So revealed preference method, stated preference method. Now pricing evaluation method can be demand curve approach, non-demand approach curve. Okay. So this is how the evaluation methods are there: contingent valuation, travel cost method, hedonic pricing method, non-demand curve basically opportunity cost, like interest is an opportunity cost. Okay. Alternative costs, shadow projects, government payments, dose response methods. Okay. These are highway proposal items which are monetized in Cuba, items which are not monetized in Cuba. Forest also. So these are different types of cost scoring, weightage, multi-criteria methods. So there are criteria. Sometimes you cannot make a decision because sometimes you have considered two factors and these factors are actually contradicting in each other, so you need to go for multi-criteria decision making. So in that case you actually put some weightage to some factors. Okay, cases where single criteria approach is inappropriate, it allowed decision makers to integrate environmental, social, and economic value preference of stakeholders. Evaluation can use a variety of quantitative, semi-quantitative, and qualitative assessment and survey methods. Okay, so this is kind of a checklist, simple checklist developed for the human thigh project. You can see here. So there are a lot of checklists and actions, environmental items. Okay, mitigation and enhancement. So mitigation basically measures envisaged to avoid, prevent, reduce, or if possible, offset any identify significant impacts. Okay, so there are different like mitigation hierarchy. Avoid, first thing is avoid the potential impact. Second is minimize the impact, decrease the spatial temporal scale of the impact. Third is rectify. If there is impact, you can rectify and apply rehabilitation technique after impact has occurred. Compensate is also a mitigation, offers the residual impact and compensate as appropriate. Then enhance, apply measures to create new benefits. So there are EU guidelines also on this, and there are a lot of benefits. You can read it here from here. Basic sustainability assessment, trade-off rules, maximum net gains, burden on argument of trade-off points. Okay, so all these things you can read. And let's move to the 29 EIA process participation. So basically this comes here, public participation and consultation. Uh, Enacted in 1994, but public consultation was enacted in EIA notification 2006. Okay, so they have actually defined what constitute a public consultation. Okay, concerns are local affected persons, others who have plausible stake in the environmental impacts of the project activity are ascertained with a view to taking into account all the material concerns in the project and activity designed as appropriate. So different forms of public participation are there like citizen control, delegated power when you delegate the power, partnership, placation, consultation, informing, therapy, and manipulation. Okay, so ladder of citizen participation. Non-participation is there. This is tokenism, and then there is citizen power. So four levels of increasing public power in participation, information, feedback approaches. So you get information, then based on that you make decision. Consultation, joint planning, delegated authority. So participation approaches that give a more active role in public. Consultation exercise involving passive audience. Basically, you are a passive audience. Public views are solicited, but respondents have little active influence over any resulting decision. Challenges are there, advantages and disadvantages are there that you can read into. Information feedback like you make a PowerPoint presentation, television advertisement, all these things. Consultation in public hearing, briefing, ombudsman representative, survey, interview, etc. Joint planning advisory committee, workshop, like in case of work bill, you see a parliamentary committee was there. Delegated authorities, citizen review board, citizen planning commission, all these things are delegated the responsibility to look into. Okay. Not much here. You can see the videos to get a good idea about these things. And review of EIS, Indian context, expert appraisal, detailed scrutiny by expert appraisal committee or state level expert appraisal committee of the application, other document like final EIA report. So when you prepare a report, you submit it to the EAC, and then they take a decision. And also they conduct reviews also. Okay, just a minute. Then decision grant or rejection of the prior environmental clearance is also there. So there is basically appraisal and then review. All those things are actually there, and they have also established National Green Tribunal. NGT Act is there 2010. So NGTs are very powerful. The Green Tribunals, they look into environmental aspect only, and they are quite quite powerful. They are very active. Their decisions also are very good. Kind of sometimes. Then EIA process, follow up, monitoring, and auditing. So this comes here. All basically auditing, monitoring, all those comes here only. So basically monitoring for conformance, monitoring for compliance post decision. Okay. Evaluation for future knowledge, management for future consents and licenses, management for liability avoidance, communication on consent closure pre-decision, stakeholder communication. Okay. And then there is monitoring. What constitute of monitoring? So monitoring is where you measure and record all the variables parameter of your concern. So basically, if air quality is a concern, then you are going to measure each and every parameter of the air quality. Similarly, for water quality, noise level, everything. So collected data, large quantity of data in systematic manner, considerably long period of time. So that is monitoring. Monitoring doesn't mean that you go to site and just take a reading and then come back. That doesn't consider. It has to be a long period of time. Okay. Environmental management auditing is also there. Basically, review. Implementation monitoring involves checking that the project has been implemented in accordance with the planning approval, and that mitigation measures have been carried out as proposed, and that any conditions associated with the approval have been honored. So, what monitoring data includes? So, indicators include casual factors, decision policy, local, all this includes social aspects also. It includes how should these strategy be carried out? Monitoring and auditing are integral to EIA. So these are to be carried out because EIA, these are integral parts of EIA. So these are different components like mitigation measure, monitoring requirement, person agency responsible, timing and frequency, agency responsible for ensuring compliance. International monitoring practice like EU and UK mandatory, recently added in, earlier it was not there in EU and UK. In Canada and Western Australia it is mandatory. Okay. US NEPA, a specific case of California, Council on Environmental Quality issued guidelines that EIS must include monitoring implementation and effectiveness of mitigation commitment, that the monitoring information must be made available to the public. Hong Kong also has the monitoring in 1990. They have introduced the monitoring. Challenges in cost is a challenge, accessibility of relevant data is a challenge, public awareness and involvement is a challenge, ability to inform decision also is a challenge. One more challenge is quality of data is also a challenge. Accessibility is one thing, quality of data is also a challenge. Okay. So problem associated with post auditing studies, project modification, monitoring data, comprehensive clarity is should be there, interpretation should be there. Okay. So one of these EIA on the James Bay mega hydroelectricity project failed to pick up the a sequence of interlinked impact which resulted in a significant increase in mercury contamination of fish and in the mercury poisoning of the native people. EIA to pick up impacts of increased lead and zinc mining trailing on the fish population in Garrow Lake, Canada, most northly hypersaline lake. So there are a lot of suggestions what we can go and see, like if EIA fails, then what happens? So EIA is very much important. Okay. London Olympics project, largest project in Europe at that time with peak construction force of almost 12,000. Project provide a framework for the monitoring of biophysical and socio-economical impacts. Okay, so this you can see. So this you can see these videos also. I think this video I play it in this interaction session, but there are a lot of videos which you can see and look into. Okay. Let's move to solve the questions from the, yeah. So before I move to solve the question, if there are any queries which you want to ask, okay, so please feel free to ask. Yeah, Tarun. Time bound manner. Yeah, there is. So in terms of reference, when government gives a terms of reference, so they actually put the timeline. Like you need to submit the EIA report on this time. Basically, generals in general sense, it has to be completed within 12 months. Okay, 6 month timeline is there, 3 month timeline is also there. But if it is the private sector or MNC company, it is they will try to do it as soon as possible. Okay, because they need to go ahead with the project. In government timeline, the TUR basically specifies the timeline. Generally, it is 1 year or 6 months based on the type of project they are going into. Okay. Okay. So if there are any queries, please feel free to ask your questions here. Otherwise, we will move to the this assignment questions. Okay, so four levels of increasing public power in public participation methods. So there were four. You saw that ladder itself. So first is information feedback methods, consultation, joint planning, and delegated authority. So all four are correct. You can see it here also. Match the following purpose for public participation in EIA, obtain public input into decision taken elsewhere. So P is basically 4, so they don't have put 4 option here. So P is basically 2. Provide public information, filling information gap, problem solving and social learning. Share decision making with public. So basically that means reflect democratic principles. EIA used to obtain consent of those affected, and then democracy in participation as an educative function. Alter distribution of power and structures of decision making. So for R involves marginalized groups, shift the focus of decision making. So this you can get it from here itself. It was there in the slides. I just skipped so that you guys can go through slides and get the question solved. Components of monitoring should include. So basically that will include summary of the significant impacts first. Mitigation measure has to be included. Monitoring requirements and responsible agencies, and timing and frequency of the monitoring. So all four has to be included. This is from there. So there can be many questions in the exam from this. So always try to solve these questions. State true or false. Implementation monitoring involves checking that the project has been implemented in accordance with the planning. So that is basically a true statement. Implementation monitoring. So I think all the questions have been solved for the assignments also, and we looked into various slides by the professor. So before concluding this session, I was kind of view that let's look into some of the lectures information given by the like, let's say let's watch this. Is it kind of a important thing? the UNECE, and they have provided different protocol for strategic environmental assessment. Okay, so there are a lot of things, lot of videos which you can see on the environmental impact assessment, and they are very kind of provide a good knowledge about these environmental impact assessment and kind of practices that are being done throughout the world. Okay, so I think if there are any queries from you guys, please feel free to ask your queries here. Otherwise, we can end this session. Okay. Yeah, Tarun, go on. Yeah, actually, when I was telling you about during the start of this session, so there are two things. First is you need to screen the project, which category this project is. If it is in category A, then you need to submit it to the expert appraisal committee for the central government, like okay, center. And then if it is B1, then state expert appraisal committee will look into your project and basically provide the. So basically, the expert appraisal committee, I say they work under Ministry of Environment and Forest. Okay, they provide the clearance. Any other questions? Anyone want to ask any questions? So, if there are no questions, then thank you guys. Thank you for attending this live session. And then you can always find me at this email ID or always ask your questions anytime. Next week, we'll be meeting at our regular time, Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. Okay? So, thank you. Thank you for attending this session. Thank you, Manas. Lovely Amo, do you have any question? Okay, then if there are no question, then I am concluding this session here. Okay. So thank you for attending this live session. We'll meet again on the Sunday, next week Sunday.